happy Christmas if you're listening over Christmas. If you're not, I don't know, happy Hanukkah, happy June, June,
happy June?
or any other time of the year. And of course, you may be listening over Christmas, but not be celebrating Christmas, in which case it's just another day. Cue for a madness song. Anyway, talking of madness, I'm Adrian Lacey in the southeast of England. He is Shane O'Connor in the Midlands. He obligingly laughs on cue. Bless you. It must be Christmas if you're laughing.
I really, because it's in the absence of having one of those. What do you call those things that you get at Christmas where you go, ah? I
don't know. It's not a kazoo, is it?
A curly blower. You know the thing I mean?
I thought you meant a hairdryer, but neither of us needs one of those.
When I say, why is it you call those things at Christmas? I thought you were going to go Brussels sprouts.
Windy Miller.
I don't know about you, but I've eaten, over the last 48 hours, I've eaten the whole box of mince pies. And,
but that's a situation normal for you, isn't it?
I was going to say,
April.
I normally do it in 24 hours, so I'm going to go slow. Oh dear. Oh, you know what I mean?
No, don't. No.
Hey?
Right. We are going to actually put on the slab a Christmas show from the past by the name of Rising Damp, that being from the year of 1975.
Wow.
You may call that 46 years ago, going on half a century. We may say the day before yesterday. Either way, we look forward to putting it on the Comedy Slab, prodding it about a bit, dissecting it, see what we make of it, give it marks each out of 5, adding up a total out of 10. And you, of course, can be doing the same at home or wherever you are. This end of the podcast, we like to do a bit of comedy news. And you dug out something about, I suppose he can only really be called a comedy icon or comedy legend, something along those lines, namely John Cleese, known to millions as Basil Fawlty. And Fawlty might be, with the conventional spelling, the way of describing his perception of an interview with BBC World Asia. Do you want to talk us through this one, please, Shane?
Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, the headline is that he wants to make a formal complaint, or words around the headline are that he wants to make a formal complaint about the BBC. He did an interview. I think he was he felt he'd been hijacked a bit, didn't he, on this on this interview, and that they got him in on one context, and then that changed when they got him in on the interview. It's with BBC World Asia, which I have to beg the question why there is even BBC World Asia. But maybe that's for. I think the BBC still kind of thinks there's an empire, doesn't it? It's like still going out there going, we must educate the natives and give them their own TV channel. But anyway.
I should declare at this moment, or remind people, I work amongst other outlets for BBC World News, brackets, English language, from London, close brackets. So I don't quite recognise your particular complaint, but your doctor's been working on it for years, and he doesn't recognise it either.
He said I should use talcum powder. I said, if I could use the talcum powder, I wouldn't need to walk like this, would I? But
absolutely. But carry on.
It always puts me in mind of that. Have you ever seen The Day Today where Chris Morris is interviewing somebody and he walks off, and then the set goes as well, and then his desk goes away, and everything leaves the room, and there's just him sort of sat there on his own.
I know the loneliness feel. I don't actually remember that sequence, but it sounds very funny. I'm laughing just you describing it.
Was he right, do you think, to do? I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, I mean, I don't know what the big hoo-ha I don't know what the big hoo-ha is in a way, because I kind of think, well, if he doesn't feel comfortable, in that environment, because it's all about feelings and feeling comfortable and everybody being happy and all the rest of it. And if he didn't feel comfortable in those surroundings, I don't think we should criticise him for because I think he tweeted and said, look, if anyone says, I don't think anybody has, but he said, if anyone says that I stormed out, I didn't. I just didn't feel comfortable, and I just stopped the interview.
I don't think he would terminate an interview after one question. It was just his feeling that, as he says, he felt he was going to be portrayed as, or she, the interviewer, who he believes was called Karishma, asked some questions that weren't on agreed topics, and he claims that she tried to portray him as old-fashioned, uncaring, and basically harmful. Now, you see, that's quite subjective, isn't it? Trying to second-guess how you think someone is portraying you.
Yeah.
But it's a legitimate complaint. I mean, he's a very experienced, a performer and interviewee, indeed. Fawlty Towers goes back, it's pretty much the same year as we're slabbing Rising Damp, isn't it? 1975-ish.
Yeah.
So, that's 45 years plus of experience in TV. Of course, Monty Python before that, lest we forget. So that goes back to 69. So, a gut feeling, one would think his gut feeling is pretty reliable after all that time. But
it's interesting, and I would much rather stand and fight in that situation. But of course, everybody's different under these things. I remember a colleague of mine in radio, and I can't, time has gone so much now, I can't remember who it was, but they were interviewing, she was interviewing a female actress. There are only female actresses on there.
I wasn't going to say that. That would be cruel.
But who knows these days? I can't keep up with it all. But
I'm going to walk out of this if you carry on down that route.
She was, why? Are you a female actress?
I'm a male actress.
She was asking questions from a list, from she got a list of questions, and wasn't really
not the way to conduct any interview, is it? Really,
not the way I was taught, and wasn't really listening to the answers either. Which is even worse. But the fair play to the person being interviewed, the actress. So say I really can't remember who it was. I'm not trying to protect her blushes, but absolutely lambasted the person interviewing her and said, "Are you listening to me? I've just answered that question," and that kind of woke her up, and it kind of became less entertainment from that point on. But yeah, I mean, kind of the interview thing. It's not like, well, I never thought it of like we didn't do that very well, let's start again kind of thing. That was warts and all was part of the process, wasn't it, in a way?
Yes, and I mean there are some people who, for this reason, will never do pre-recorded interviews because, of course, they could be edited with a slant, or you can always worry that they're going to be edited with a slant. And the interviewee I was talking about, that was a live interview. At least a politician knows, what's gone out can't be retrieved. Yeah. Which is both good and bad, but at least they're in control of their answers. If not, then you're never in control of the questions. But so do we make a conclusion on this, or
the only
can we not really conclude anything?
And it worries me as somebody who's getting older is that to see the vitriol on social media along the lines of white old men are disgusting, etc., etc. You kind of think, what a lovely future we're wandering into. I should really enjoy the sunset of my life. And B, how did it become okay to be like that? And for somebody like Cleese, who, I don't know the bloke, but you kind of think he's never overtly done harm, has he? As far as I'm aware.
I don't think he's in the business of that, and he's done us some great favours, I think. Like possibly nothing to do with his comedy other than giving him a profile. You've seen the footage of him in discussion with a bishop about religious belief back in the 70s when the church was new.
Yeah, that was. That was Malcolm Muggeridge sharing that, I think. Yeah,
I think so. Yes, he would have been in his pomp.
It's on YouTube, isn't it? Fabulous discussion. But yeah, no, I just thought it was sad. It's like you normally get like the social media pitchfork mob come out, but yeah, it just degenerates into that really. But I don't know. I mean, I'm a bit surprised that a man of his experience and standing is surprised.
It would be so interesting, wouldn't it, to be able to see the footage. Maybe someone will leak it one day online. Who knows? So we sashay shamelessly on, regardless, to put on the notional marble, wherein we can prod it and dissect it. We put on the 1975 Rising Damp Christmas special. Not really branded a Christmas special, was it? But it does have a subtitle, as all episodes of Rising Damp, I believe, do. This one being For the Man Who Has Everything, which is a sort of, well, I read that and I made reference to it in our last show. As an advertising slogan from that era.
Yeah, do you know, I was looking back as well when you were saying the date of this was 75, so I was 9 years old. Here's the weird thing. I remember myself being older watching this. And I think it's interesting because I never think of it as a time. I never think of it as a like when I watch the Sweeney, I think, oh, that's the 70s personified. But this I don't, because they never go outside, do they? You never see the cars, which are always the giveaway.
But actually, if I can pause you there, that is itself a giveaway. They don't go outside.
Yeah.
And can you think what I'm thinking of it, which I'm sure you'll know?
Cost.
Well, not that's part of it, but it's the fact that it derives from a stage play, which I didn't know, I confess.
Oh, yeah.
It may be that you've been across this for 46 years, but it was news to me because I have to confess, I certainly never saw the show at the time. And I've learned quite a lot, not least that it was only the second play of the playwright who then became the writer of 4 series of Rising Damp from 1974 to 78. Now, would you know the pronunciation of his surname? Because I don't really want to get it wrong.
It's Chappell.
It's Chappell, right. He's got 2 L's. That's what threw me. Sometimes such people might be Chappell. Or certainly if it had an E on the end, it might be Chappell.
No,
I speak as someone going out with a Raffel as opposed to a ruffle.
He's a Chappell, mate, all day long. Eric Chappell.
Okay, we love it. Salt the earth, working class lad from Grantham in Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
Good on him. Well, we can quite possibly come back to him because obviously the writer is key here, but lots to talk about. But I think we should get a flavour of the show fairly soon. And let's see if I can set this up nicely. We must mention Frances de la Tour, but unfortunately in this episode she's conspicuous by her absence. So in this clip we hear Gabrielle, or Gay Rose as Brenda, as a postwoman, and the wonderful Leonard Rossiter, otherwise known as Rigsby, or I think he was Rooksby in the original stage play.
Yeah, he was.
And here he is in, I think he's trying to get her under the mistletoe, and that's not a euphemism, that's actually practically and physically the truth.
So you're all alone?
Yes.
What about your tenants?
Oh, they're all away for Christmas. Still, I don't care. I don't want them here steaming the place out with the Christmas puddings. They're not bothered about me anyway. They wouldn't give me a second thought, one of them.
Ah, I think that's very sad.
Well, did you have a drink while you're here, Miss...
Gwen.
Gwen, oh, that's a nice name, isn't it?
No, thank you. I am on duty.
Oh, I'm sure the Postmaster General won't mind.
Oh, thank you.
You married, Gwen?
No.
I suppose you never had the time, eh? Out in all weathers, fighting your way through snowdrifts. Still, I must say, it's done wonders for your complexion, eh? Certainly brought the roses to your cheek.
Thank you, Mr. Rigsby.
Oh, goodness me.
What?
Oh, we appear to be standing under the mistletoe, look.
Are we?
You can't quarrel with fate, eh?
But Mr. Rigsby, I'm in uniform.
All right, I don't mind.
Mr. Rigsby, please. You're tampering with the Royal Mail. That's a criminal offence.
Oh, it's like that, is it?
Well, I am on duty.
Right. Well, would you excuse me? I'd just like to read my correspondence. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you know, it's interesting listening to that, that you realise how much, again, is the physicality of what he's doing and how he's doing it and the mannerisms and the movements. And do you get a sense of that you just think, actually, there's more than 50% missing by not seeing him?
Yes, you do become aware of that. I mean, obviously, he's got a very captivating voice and vocal delivery and all the little tics and so on. But to the extent that we can picture them from the voice, that's probably because we've seen him in the first place deliver in other episodes, if not of this show, then other, I don't know, Reggie Perrin, of course, was massive in the 70s for him. But it also, once reminded of the intensity of his performance, he just gives everything in every frame, doesn't he?
Yeah. That do you know? Because he died on stage in Lute, didn't he?
Did he?
Yeah.
I know he died young. Terribly sad.
And I saw an interview of, and I can't think who it was, another fellow actor said that. Oh, I know it was. It was Jim Whitfield. Jim Whitfield said of him. She said, "I'm sure." She said, and I don't mean to be nasty or mean by saying this. She said, but I'm sure that his performance was what contributed to his death, is what killed him, because he was full on 100 miles an hour. Gave everything. You know, he'd walk into a room or he'd walk onto a stage and he'd expect you to be there with him and on it every time.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he made other actors raise their game around him. But, I was just talking the other week about Eric Morecambe and
yes,
the fact that in a double act, the comedian has to work harder, I think. And Eric certainly thought that. And you might say, oh, well, he would say that. But I think Ernie Wise agreed with him in that instance, and that was contributory to Eric's sad early demise. There were other factors as well. In the case of Leonard Roster, I've forgotten them, but was it a heart attack then? Because that can take people very quickly, can't it?
Yeah,
sadly?
Yeah, it was, and seemed to be more prevalent in those days as well, didn't it? Really, it was just the similar kind of thing to. Nowadays, how we, would certainly honestly is you wouldn't have survived in the 70s. Shall I give you a quick headline anyway?
So sorry.
Yeah, no, mine is it's short and sweet. And my headline is low rent, but good value, and very comfortable.
It's not sounding at all damp in terms of the performance, other than any sweat on the forehead. Fantastic. Well, I mean, I think we got the sense that you were already a convert. The giveaway is that you'd seen this on ITV3 a number of times, if not this particular episode, then others. And if I had to guess, it's a classic 70s sitcom that the 9-year-old Shane enjoyed then and enjoys now.
It's interesting that you say this whole thing coming from this the play The Banana Box that Eric Chappell wrote.
Yeah, I didn't mention the title. I did wonder whether the title itself was slightly worrying.
Well, it got. I mean, I was lucky enough to find an interview with Eric Chappell on YouTube, on the TV originally. He was, believe it or not, he was working for the East Midlands Electricity Board.
Oh yeah, apparently for 22 years.
Yeah,
it says somewhere.
And then, but it's really like they kind of opened the floodgates. But he wrote this play, and as you say, then he got a commission to write Rising Damp. But then he went on to write The Squirrels, Only When I Laugh, The Bounder, Duty Free, Home to Roost. I mean, all of which had double figures episodes when you put all the series together. And you kind of think, what on earth was he doing all of his life, working for East Midlands Electricity Board? Then all of a sudden, he wrote all these series and plays. It's incredible, isn't it? Amazing story.
Yes. I mean, we commented just the other week on that we felt that some performers, or maybe performers in general in Britain, could get success later in life than might be the case now. I do worry that you can feel washed up in your late 20s now as an actor. That might be a slight exaggeration, but it certainly feels like minds were a bit more open, with certain caveats. Because
what do you mean open to what, reading scripts and commissioning them, or?
I think well, if you saw now on a CV, but you're probably best advised not to make any reference to age on a CV if you can get away with it. But if you saw that a writer was in their 40s, you'd think, well, if they haven't had a hit on TV by their 40s, they're not going to get one.
Right.
But I can think immediately of another person who did rather well, and I think in his 40s, and that was Spike Mullins. We've referred to him before. If I've got the right Spike, I always have to double check, because it's not Spike Milligan, it's Spike Mullins, who wrote the monologues for Ronnie Corbett at the end of the Two Ronnies. Yeah. I think I've got the right guy. And he was still a painter and decorator into his 40s, I think. So, again, success coming late.
The play that they put on, it first went to the Hampstead Theatre Club, and I know you're quite familiar with that. I don't know whether you...
No, the stereotype you have of me would suggest that.
No,
you're so cheeky.
Let me finish. I was going to say, you're quite familiar with, more familiar with London than I am. Although I'm not really quite sure whether you're that familiar with North London or whether you're a south of the river lad. But I mean, is that something you've heard of or come across, the Hampstead Theatre Club? Because I was reading about it, and apparently it had given quite a lot of people and a lot of plays their first break kind of thing. They broke a lot of stuff. I don't know whether is that you were. Well,
I don't know about the club, and to my shame, I don't think I've ever been to the theatre. I'm the opposite of a black cabbie. I do go south of the river,
right.
And have spent more time there than in the north. I should go to Hampstead Theatre. We all should, because a lot of I think classic theatre started there. It's a very privileged part of London. There's no doubt about it. But you either swim with the flow or you try and swim against the tide and maybe drown. So sometimes it's best. It certainly did Mr. Chappell a favour having a play on in London, because you kind of feel that sadly, and it might still sadly be the case, although less so now, if his play had not gone never mind south of the river, but not gone south of Leeds Playhouse, so that it wouldn't have been seen by any TV execs. I mean, Channel 4's got a Leeds base now, and the BBC up in Salford and so on. So I would hope these are better times for writers from what we used to call the North.
I think it's interesting, and maybe we can talk about this as well, the difference between ITV and BBC comedy. And I do think that ITV committed suicide, commercial suicide, when they got rid of their regional identities. And of course, this one came out of Yorkshire TV, didn't it? From it would have been made up in Leeds.
Yes. Can I quickly say, just while you're on that, before I forget, the copyright though is held by Trident Television, and I felt like you, because I went to Company's House to find out why is it Yorkshire Television made it, the production, or they're the people who aired it, and but the copyright goes to Trident Television. Well, I did a bit of wickification, wickedly, and Trident Television was to try and get around the problem. Originally, it was going to be 3 different companies, hence the try, as in 3. But it ended up being Tyne Tees and Yorkshire Television, I think, because they shared a transmitter, if I understood it correctly. It's all getting a bit subtle, and the sound of podcast players going off around the world probably should move us along. But essentially, it was a legal thing to try and be fair to Yorkshire and Tyne Tees, who shared a transmitter, I believe.
Right.
But feel free to research it and correct me in a future edition.
I mean, I think that's where, and I wanted to ask you the question, because I know you've kind of you quoted was it Stuart Lee about ITV.
Oh yeah, being the failed state.
Yeah, about ITV productions, and I just think there was a point in the 70s when they were on a par with BBC productions. You wouldn't automatically go, oh, this is an ITV inferior product, and I'm discounting things like on the buses, which were by that time were a standard all of their own, weren't they? I suppose really, and not a particularly good one, but. What is it? Why does this stand up and stand the test of time? Whereas other ITV comedies that were made 4 years ago, you kind of think, well, I don't want that one to see the light of day again. I don't understand why. I mean, other than there isn't this franchise system that there used to be, and now there's this just big homogenous blob of ITV.
Well, if it is the franchise system, why would that work? Because you could think another way of arguing it could have gone the other way, which was that all the talent was fragmented and carved up, and none of the companies had enough heft individually to be good.
But it was competitive. You see, this is the thing, isn't it? Is that they were all competing to get their program on the network. So they were trying to make the best programs, the best productions, so that they got a slot on the network, and they could, and it was pride, look at us, we might only be a small franchise, but we've got our program on, people love it, and it's on the network. There was a competitive edge to it. I don't know if it was just me at the time being a bit of a geek and a nerd, but I always think that they all had their own exciting identities, not least their logos. They all had, different logos and different idents for each channel. But I mean, even to the point where my wife was working at GMTV, at Good Morning Britain for a while. And I said, "Oh, how did you get?" And she was working down in London. I said, "How did you get on?" She said, "Oh, yeah, I'm working." I said, "Were you working in the on the South Bank, the tower?" And she said, "Yeah, why?" And I said, "Oh, that was the LWT. That's where they used to be, you know." And then you kind of think, "Oh, that was again. It was this exciting identity." And if you go down to London, you go, "Well, there's London Weekend Television there." And if you go to Teddington Lock, you'd see Thames Television, which I think there's still a TV studio down there. Actually, I think that's still.
I think it functions as a sort of a standalone facilities
That's
house.
It, yeah. There's, but they broke all this up, and a lot of it is no more. It's sad, really, but it's interesting. The play, I got to mention. Did you notice who was in? Did you see? I saw a poster for the play. When it was in the West End, and
no, but I know it didn't have Richard Beckinsale at that stage. Did it? But I'll let you finish the thought.
It had Paul Jones from the Manfreds, from Manfred Mann.
Oh wow, who I worked with on a kids show called Beat the Teacher.
Oh yeah, they actually beat the living daylights out of him, didn't they? At the end, it was terrible. Let's call an ambulance for it. But other than that,
very humbling.
There's the same cast: Don Warrington playing Philip. Frances de la Tour playing Miss Jones and Leonard Rossiter. So it's quite interesting that almost the complete cast.
I'm glad they carried across, because I don't know. Again, that seems another thing that would be less likely these days, that you'd carry the same cast across. That may be nonsense. I don't know, but it's just a gut feeling.
I do like the look of it as well, though. I mean, we were saying about how it never goes outside, maybe partly because of cost, but as you rightly identified, because it was born out of a play. But I just love the look of. I love the filth of the thing, like everything from.
Are you at home in it?
From the window. I mean, the windows you can't actually. They're almost like semi-opaque, aren't they? You can't really see out of the windows because they're so filthy, and it looks like a real Rackman's Rent place, doesn't it? The walls are dirty, the furniture, even his cardigan. You kind of think that needs to go in the wash, mate. Now that's time,
And it's a bit threadbare as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for me, it's just a home from home.
Said it's a boutique hotel.
But
yeah. I didn't
easy
really,
hotel.
I knew he was a bit of a sort, but it was interesting again seeing. I saw an interview with Eric Chappell, and he was saying about how much Richard Beckinsale, what a nice guy he was, and how he was the cement in the cast. And they said without Richard, they wouldn't have been able to cope with Len's temperament, was the exact quote.
Oh gosh.
He said because he could be an unmitigated bastard, which you think. I knew I remember a story about when he used to do the Shinzano adverts with Joan Collins.
Oh yeah.
And he used to refer to her as the prop. When's the prop arriving? Because he didn't think she was an actress suitable of his time, kind of thing.
But even if you thought that, to express it, gosh, it's another thing entirely.
Yeah.
And then if you actually join the dots, if you really feel that about the person you're acting against, well, it can't be good enough for you then, can it?
No.
The production.
No.
Even if it is just a 30-second ad.
And it's interesting that he did it at all. I saw something Don Warrington was saying, who plays Philip. Don Warrington said that, when he took this on, he said, don't forget, these are in the days when TV was considered by an actor to be inferior to stage, and sitcom was even what you might as well go and do adverts, mate, because it's not. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't considered to be the proper job at all, was it?
And it's a shame, because something. I mean, it's a back to front thinking, isn't it? Something's really touching a public nerve, to then conclude, oh, it must be bad. I always think of the Beatles in that kind of instance. Something that's popular can be very good, can't it?
Yeah. I do wonder. I mean, it is very farcical, isn't it? I mean, it's got a high element of farce. There's in this particular episode, Philip has got a girlfriend that's come to visit him, and she's sat in Rigsby's room, and there's a confusion over he thinks that Philip has lent him one of his wives because Philip's always telling him he's got 8 wives and all this sort of stuff. And you kind of, it's like, oh, whoops, where's my trousers, isn't it? I mean, it is that kind of level.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that. Sure, that would lead us rather nicely onto our next clip, which is that scene. It's set up first by, I thought we must hear some of Richard Beckinsale, who I believe, you're the expert on this show more than me, isn't he playing a medical student who lives at the top of the house? Is that right?
He says he is, but I think there's some ambiguity as the series goes
Is that
on.
to get the ladies into bed, perchance?
Yeah, and there's that skeleton hanging in the back, isn't there, of his room and all that sort of stuff. In the same way that Philip was adamant that he's the son of a prince or something like that, and then it's only in the film version that you find out that he wasn't actually. Anyway,
Lucy, we should explain, although it will fall into place, and you sort of set the scene. Lucy is black, but she's not, surprise, surprise, from the wilds of deepest Africa, as I think we're going to find out, although there might be, this misunderstanding by Rigsby a bit later on.
Has Philip managed to get the room?
Well, he is seeing Rigsby at the moment.
Oh, he said it'd be all right.
Did he? Oh, well, Rigsby's a bit odd. You know, shouldn't raise your hopes too high.
Why not?
Well, he doesn't like he's not very keen on...
On what?
On people from Northampton. Excuse me, I'll go and find Philip.
Where is my present?
It's in your room.
What is his shirt? Is it?
No. It's a surprise. No.
Oh, is it?
It's in your room. Come on.
All right. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed.
Oh, it's nothing.
Maybe nothing to you, mate. To me, it's a lot to me.
Well, you know they say it's the thought that counts.
Well, it's a lovely thought. Are you sure you won't have any regret it?
Oh, no. My father sent me half a dozen.
I mean, this is it all plays into the lies that Philip tells Rigsby just to wind him up all through the series, and he does that so. Don Warrington does that so well. It's really weird listening back and watching it now and watching it in the modern day that I'd never really thought that this was a sitcom about race in the same way that Alf Garnett or Love Thy Neighbour quite obviously is. But Eric Chappell actually said, he said I'd seen so many sitcoms about race. He said, and there just wasn't a lot of laughs in them. And so he set out to write something like that. In the days of as we are now, in the days of people taking offence on other people's behalf, it was interesting to hear that Don Warrington he had a lot of time for the writing and for the premises that he found himself in. And he actually said, whenever I spoke to black people, if I met black people out or talked to friends or family or whatever, he said they always really enjoyed seeing me play Philip. He said because they thought it was almost for the first time that it was a black actor portraying a black character in the way that it should be.
Yeah, it's all about where the focus of the laughter is and at whose expense, and it's very definitely at Rigsby's expense rather than at Philip's expense, or indeed the female black character Lucy, played by Elizabeth Adair or Adare. Forgive me, I don't know the pronunciation of her name. I mean, they stand tall in as characters. And they're obviously very educated, but it's a very clever script, isn't it? Because black people do get, I'm told, get used to people saying, "Oh, people who are surprised maybe spoke to them on the phone thinking they're white, and then they meet them, and all this kind of code. It's very clever. Rigsby doesn't like people from in Northampton.
Yeah. Because she'd said, "Oh, I'm from Northampton," hadn't she, previously to that?
Yeah, not the wilds of Africa.
Yeah, and so even Alan's explaining it in those terms as well. But I just think it's just interesting, that I'd never really perceived that was. But mate, I'm 9 years old, so that's probably not.
You wouldn't get maybe the subtler elements. But there's so much going on, isn't there? Again, it's unspoken, it's subtext, and some of it is visual, of course. But it's done with such graciousness, and I think it stands the test of time. Whereas I think now I fear it wouldn't even reach the studio. It wouldn't get past some of the things. Wouldn't get, and obviously race and perception of race has moved on, but there is still racism, and I think this handles it deftly and cleverly.
Yeah, I mean, there always will be racism, won't there? Racism is about people being different from, there'll be racist black people, racist white people, racist Chinese, but you know what I mean? I mean, that's people. Whenever there's a division, let them be vile to each other, whether it's, over religion or sex or sexuality or race, or that's just people. I'm afraid people are just horrible at times, as much as they are.
I didn't like the way you were looking at me on Skype as you said that.
Yeah, but, I shouldn't have pointed. That was the thing, to point. The really sad story that I came across, and again, it was a Don Warrington interview, because Richard Beckinsale left after 3 series.
I didn't know, so he didn't do the 4th and last one then?
No, and 2 years after he left, he died. And Don Warrington said, he said, I found out, he said, because a car drove past me. And he said, and obviously somebody recognised who I was, wound the window down and shouted, "I see your mate's dead," and drove off.
Oh, that's not exactly a subtle way to find out, is it?
And I thought, wow, that's awful, isn't it, really? But yeah, he didn't do the. I thought whenever I'd watched it, I always thought that he died after series 3, but he just decided he just wanted to move on and do other stuff.
Right. Well, I don't know quite how Porridge fits into the timeline.
Yeah.
You probably know better than me.
I'm not sure.
Wouldn't they have overlapped a bit, actually?
Yeah, I think maybe, because Porridge did 4 series, didn't it? I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I'm saying yeah, but certainly Rising Damp ran from 75 to 78.
And I don't know if it's still true now, but there was at one time a suggestion, or more than a suggestion, that Francis de la Tour, who was another serious actor, in I would say in the same vein as as Leonard Rossiter. I mean, really, she's I don't know if you've ever seen her being interviewed. She's very, very earnest and very, very, takes what she does very seriously. But she wouldn't do an interview where she had to discuss playing Miss Jones. She just went,
really? Yeah,
she just said, that's it. I've done that. That's it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's it. It's finished.
That's interesting because if you say yes to doing it, then anyway, you're not obliged to do interviews. But yeah, she. But she's got the sort of theatrical chops, definitely. But I'm glad she said yes to the original stage play. And
you're not obliged to do an interview, but anything you do say will be taken down and recorded.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? But hey, these days it might be written into the contract that thou shalt do interviews if thou says yes to the part.
Yeah,
but, it was perhaps a more innocent age in a way.
Do you know, it's funny because I don't know if I told you this before, I think I did, Martin Shaw, fellow Brummie who played one half of The Professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about to do an interview with him. I was really looking forward to it because we're both from the same neck. We're both from Great Bar in Birmingham, the same neck of the woods, Mm. And I thought, this is going to be great. And he was a lovely, lovely man. But somebody had told me, said, whatever you do, don't mention The Professionals. He will not talk about The Professionals. He hates it. And it'll really upset him and blah, blah, blah. This is the people setting up the interview. And I think, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Because that was one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because that was his claim to fame, which shot him to stardom. And he was the first one to bring it up. And I said in the interview, I said, "Oh, they did tell me not to talk about the." He said, "Oh no," he said, "They just get it all wrong." He said, "You have a bad day and you go, I don't want to talk about that today." He said, "And you think that's it forever, kind of thing." He said, "But no, it's fine."
So it's his people getting it wrong.
Yeah. Or the people he was working with that day. I'm not sure they're actually his. But yeah, you just kind of think, you could have sweated all through that interview, and he was saying, "No, fine, it's not a problem." But she apparently definitely, certainly at one stage, did say no to that.
Right. Well, that's her right. But that's an interesting one. Anyway, we can put off the evil hour no longer. It must be time for the scores on the doors, Miss Ford.
I'm presuming by the way you phrased that it was a direct look towards me to say, give us your...
Yeah, it's my Christmas gift to you, to jolly you along, to give it a score. I'm going to guess it's going to be on the generous side, is it not?
Well, I don't know. It depends whether you think 4's generous or not, but...
it is for you, meanie.
It is, and it also is because it's a farce, because I'm not a huge fan of farce, but I don't know what it is about why this carries it off. Is it the quality and strength of the cast? Because as you say, there's not a dead bit of wood in there as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, for me, it just I don't know, it just does it. It just hits the mark, and a 4 out of 5 for me. Which
coincidentally is exactly the same I wanted to give it. It just comes straight from the gut. Didn't think about it too long because I overthink everything, and end up doing the same thing. So that's a healthy 8 out of 10 from us. I just think, the quality runs through it. I was tempted to say it all comes from the writing, but of course it's one of those things. Everything has to be right, and which includes some stellar performances. So 8 out of 10. Cat would prefer Rising Damp at Christmas. So that was the Ghost of Christmas Past. I think we're going to delve into the past again, but interestingly, we're going to, I think you sort of hinted off-air before we hit record that you might be putting forward someone's suggestion, one of our dear listeners.
Yeah, and I'll give the full details next week, but Sarah sent me a note on Facebook and said how much she enjoyed the comedy slab, which is always a good way to start any kind of missive to us.
It's like, well, I love the show.
Yeah, I think, okay, you've got me interested. I'm hooked now. What are you going to tell me? And she went on to say, I noticed that you haven't done the Goon Show. And I thought, oh, sure we have. And I've spent about 15 minutes going back through the 175, 74 episodes thinking, well, she's right. We haven't done the Goon Show at all. And I don't think she's a particular fan, which makes it even more interesting. She said, but I'd love to hear your take on the Goon Show and how it stands up. So I thought that would be a good opportunity to get it on the slab. The episode that I've chosen, and it was more or less like a stick a pin in, because there's quite a few, isn't there? Yeah. It went through a lot of sort of transformations in the early days. I don't think they named their episodes, but as things went on, and I think we're from series 7 or something like that. But again, I'll confirm all the details next week. The one we're going to look at is called The Nasty Affair at the Barami Oasis. The Nasty Affair at the Barami Oasis. The Goon Show is your homework, should you choose to accept it for next week.
And that's on our laser display board.
Yes.
As they say. I'm sorry, I haven't a clue.
Thank you, Samantha.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion, and keep them coming. We don't guarantee doing all of them, but so far they've been corkers, haven't they?
Yeah.
And certainly worth doing.
Yeah, and every time I get one, you see one, like you've thrown one in that somebody sent, you kind of go, oh, yeah, why didn't we think of that before now, So it's always just having that mind, isn't it?
We've almost taken it for granted that we've done the Goon Show because you have to. But we've left it this long. Thank you for correcting our oversight. On anti-social media, we are at Comedy Slab on Twitter. Do follow us there. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook. Just mentioned it. That's one way of getting in touch with us. We are at Comedy Slab there too. Do like our page there. Personal recommendation, always appreciated, as is a nice corking multi-star review. Not, of course, that we want to twist the arm up your back. But on Apple Podcasts, stroke iTunes, that would be appreciated too. Thank you very much in advance.
Yeah, and if you could listen on Spreaker, if you're listening to it, I think they've got a nifty little app as well now. But if you can listen on Spreaker, that does us an awful lot of good. But you can find it on Stitcher, iHeart Radio, Apple Podcast, and all the rest of it. And also there's that visualization thing that we've got on YouTube as well, just in case you want to go and have a stare at a screen and go, is that moving or not? I can't really tell. Am I drunk?
The eyes follow you around the room.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, that's the thing. You can't actually see the other eye, but you'd imagine it's craning around the beat to look at you, wouldn't you? That's the thing.
That just about wraps it up. I think I'm suffering from rising damp, but it might be because I've got my feet in a bucket of cold water. I can think more clearly when I do that. It's funny, that.
The only thing I've got is a bit of rising mince pie.
I thought it was going to be rising cramp.
Oh, dear.
Well, you are RC, aren't you?